In the early spring of 1922, in the quiet countryside of Bavaria, there stood a small, isolated farm known as Hinterkaifeck. It sat between the towns, removed from the rhythm of daily life, surrounded by fields and forest, where the nights were long and the silence stretched without interruption. It was the kind of place where sound carried, where footsteps in the distance could be heard long before anyone arrived, where a single light in the window meant someone was awake, and where darkness, once settled, felt complete. Nothing about Hinterkaifeck suggested it would become one of the most unsettling, unsolved crimes in German history. And yet, in the final days of March, something shifted, quietly, almost imperceptibly, before revealing itself in the most disturbing way. The farm was owned by Andreas Gruber, a man known in the area for his stern demeanor and private nature. He lived with his wife Tetzelia Gruber and their widowed daughter, Victoria Gabriel. Victoria had 2 children, her daughter, also named Tetzelia Gabriel, who was 7 years old, and her young son, Joseph Gabriel, just 2. Their lives followed a predictable pattern shaped by farm work and routine. Days were spent tending animals, maintaining the property, and managing the quiet demands of rural life. It was not an easy existence, but it was stable, unchanging in a way that can feel both comforting and isolating. In late March, a new maid arrived, Maria Baumgartner. She had been hired to assist with the household and had only just begun her work at the farm. Her sister later recalled that Maria felt uneasy about the position before arriving, as if something about the place troubled her in a way she could not fully explain. She arrived on March 31st. By the next day, she would be gone. In the week leading up to the murders, Andreas Gruber noticed something unusual. Snow had fallen lightly across the land, leaving a clear record of movement across the farm's perimeter. One day, he discovered a set of footprints leading from the forest toward the house. What made them unsettling was not their presence, but their absence. There were no returning tracks. Whoever had approached the farm had not walked back the way they came. The footprints simply ended at the property, as though the person had chosen to stay, or had found another way out. Gruber reportedly followed the tracks to the edge of the forest, but found nothing further. No sign of where the person had gone, no indication of what they wanted. Soon after, other small disturbances began to emerge. Keys went missing. Not dramatically, just one key, gone without explanation. The house remained locked. No signs of forced entry were ever found. And yet, the idea that someone might have access to the home lingered quietly in the background. Then came the sounds. At night, members of the household began to hear footsteps in the attic. Slow, deliberate movement above their heads, as if someone were pacing in the darkness. The kind of sound that repeats just enough to feel intentional, but not enough to be easily explained. Each time Andreas investigated, he found nothing. The attic appeared empty. No intruder, no animal, only still air and dust. The family chose to remain. On the evening of March 31st, life at Hinterkaifeck appeared to continue as normal. There were no recorded signs of distress that day, no known visitors, no urgent warnings. At some point during the night, one member of the household entered the barn. What happened next has been reconstructed only through evidence and theory, but investigators believe that each victim was lured, one by one, into that space. Inside the barn, 4 members of the family were killed. Andreas Gruber, his wife Tetzelia, their daughter Victoria, and young Tetzelia. Their bodies were later found arranged beneath layers of hay. Inside the house, the violence continued. The maid, Maria Baumgartner, and the young boy Joseph were also killed. There were no signs of a prolonged struggle, no evidence of neighbors hearing distress, no indication that anyone escaped or attempted to flee. Everything unfolded in silence. If the story ended there, it would already be deeply unsettling. But what followed is what has kept this case alive for over a century. After the murders, someone remained on the farm. For several days, life at Hinterkaifeck appeared to continue. The animals were fed. This detail is particularly striking, as farm animals require consistent care. They cannot be neglected without consequence. And yet, when neighbors later checked the property, the livestock had been maintained. Smoke was seen rising from the chimney. Someone had kept the fire going. Bread was eaten. The kitchen showed signs of recent use. This was not the aftermath of a hurried escape. It suggested presence, time, a decision to stay. Whoever committed the murders did not leave immediately. They stayed and lived among the silence. Days passed before concern began to grow. The family had not been seen, and their absence became noticeable in a community where routine was everything. On April 4th, neighbors arrived at the farm to investigate. They entered the property and began calling out, expecting perhaps illness or an accident or some explanation that could be resolved quickly. Instead, they found the barn, and within it, the bodies. The discovery was immediate and devastating. Authorities were contacted, and the investigation began. Police examined the scene in detail, but even from the beginning, the case presented unusual challenges. The crime scene had been disturbed. Before authorities arrived, several individuals had already entered the property, unintentionally contaminating evidence. Tools believed to be the murder weapon were found on the farm, but nothing could be definitively tied to a suspect. Witnesses reported seeing a man in the area in the days before the murders, but descriptions were inconsistent. Over time, multiple theories emerged. Some believed the crime was personal, linked to past disputes or relationships. Others thought it may have been a robbery, though little appeared to be taken. There were suggestions that the perpetrator may have been someone familiar with the farm, someone who knew its layout, its routines, and its isolation. Despite extensive efforts, no suspect was ever conclusively identified. The Hinterkaifeck murders leave behind a series of quiet, persistent questions. Who left the footprints in the snow? Who walked in the attic at night? Who had access to the missing key? And perhaps most unsettling of all, who stayed on the farm after the murders, tending to animals and maintaining the illusion of life? These are questions without answers. They do not resolve. They remain suspended, much like the silence that once surrounded the farm itself. The buildings of Hinterkaifeck no longer stand. The farm was eventually demolished, leaving behind only open land and memory. But the story remains. It lingers in the details that do not quite fit, in the sense that something was present long before the crime and long after it should have ended. It is not a loud story. It does not rely on spectacle or sudden shock. Instead, it settles slowly, like dusk over a quiet field, and it stays there, unmoving, unanswered. If you enjoyed this video, please please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. See you in the next one.